Hello friends, this is Vidyasagar once again. Welcome back to the English mentoring class of Pragati's e-summer course. I hope and pray all of you are doing well back home, staying safe and listening to your parents and the government. Alright, the last time around we were talking about English as a language, the importance and the tricks and difficulties that we face as learners of the language, and at the same time how it is so very inflexive and so very non-phonetic, which actually makes it probably the richest language in the world. And then we went on to delve into the class by talking about sentences, types of sentences. We took examples like the exclamatory sentence or the imperative sentence, the assertive sentence, and so on and so forth. We also talked about various examples with regards to each type of the sentences. Then we talked about how the sentence is actually divided into two parts, that is the subject and the predicate, and in Hindi we also tried to translate the same for our own better understanding, wherein we say that the subject is actually the Vishay and the predicate is actually the Vishay Vastu. And we were also actually looking into a very important part of the English language, that is the use of the verb, or the role of the verb, or the role that the verb plays in the language, in the development of the language, and at the same time in the use or the utility of the language. And I left you with this thought. I also gave you a little bit of a task to do. I'm pleased to see that many of you have replied me with your answers, most of which are actually correct, to my surprise and my pleasant surprise. I'm really thankful to you that you're taking it seriously. Okay. Having said so, I also told you last time before leaving that the verb is the most important part of any language, and truly so, because it's the action. Whenever we talk about something or read or learn about something, we are actually talking about the action taking place, and if we do not talk about the action at all, then I don't think we talk about anything either, right? So the verb is the most important and the most the pivotal part of a language, and of course, because it's a pivotal part of the language, it also becomes very, very important and imperative for a sentence to take its a particular or the defined shape or the assumed shape that we want to give it to. So let's move ahead and let's take our discussions further and learning further in understanding what a verb is all about. Okay. And as generally people say, and generally even we say, when someone asks us as to what a verb is, we say that any action word or a doing word is called as a verb, and we are correct, we are not wrong. But then we need to take it our understanding a little bit or a tad bit further. What do I mean by saying it is, when you simply say that an action word is a verb, it actually leaves a little bit of a degree of ambiguity for the person who listens to you, or for the layman to try to understand as to what the utility of that definition is. Okay, so we'll try to little bit define it further. I have prepared a presentation for you guys, and I'll share the same with you, and I'm actually sharing the same with you in this video as well, wherein you will see the definition of the verb in a very simplistic fashion, probably which goes like this. A regular verb, or a verb, is actually a word which describes about a state or an action or a happening or an instance for that matter, and we can use it, or we rather use it in anything that we read, in anything that we do, in anything that we speak. Okay, and which precisely makes it the only part of speech probably without which we cannot frame, we cannot construct a meaningful sentence. Okay, so that is a verb. Once again, repeating what a verb is. A verb is of course an action word, it's a doing word. At the same time, it is a word which talks about an action, which talks about a deed, it talks about a state, it talks about a state of being, it talks about a happening, and so on and so forth. Alright, now having discussed about what a verb is all about, it becomes all the more important to understand whether there are types of verbs, kinds of verbs, and forms of verbs, and so on and so forth. In today's class, we would like to dedicate time in bettering our understanding of not just the verb but also about the two other types of verbs that we're talking about, that is the regular verb and the irregular verbs. Last time in the class we also spoke about it. Okay, a few of you also gave us examples as to there are 16 verbs based on which there are other verbs take their forms and so on and so forth, and rightly so. Okay, now we'll be talking about what a regular verb is, what an irregular verb is, and so on and so forth. Now, for your better understanding, to help the presentation better, let me tell it to you. A regular verb is any verb whose its conjugation follows the typical pattern. Okay, now for example, a regular verb can be used or you can actually judge a regular verb when you will be able to define its other forms or its conjugal forms by using ing and ed. Okay, for example, let us say go. Okay, so going. Now ing is the conjugate form of the verb go. Now in such a pattern we can actually see that it is a regular verb. But actually an irregular verb is something which does not necessarily follow a conjugation, or whose conjugation actually follows a different path altogether or a different pattern altogether, and that is actually called as an irregular verb. Now, to give you examples, I have further divided the irregular verbs, and based on the information that we find in grammar books, I've also tried to make it further simpler by telling you that there are actually 200 different verbs which can be classified as irregular verbs. Now, then they are divided into 4 different groups or 4 different types. Okay. Now, what is the type 1? The type 1 is an irregular verb which has the same base form, but same past simple form and the same past participle form. Like the last time around you gave us examples, like there are 3 degrees, correct? The simple present, the simple past, and the participle. Now all of you gave me many examples when you wrote that exercise, when you took examples like, for example, cut or put. So you use that the forms, the 2 other degrees of the forms of those verbs as cut, put, put. Now in this instance, or in such a kind of, or in such a type of an irregular verb, we see that the first the form or the base form, the past simple form, and the past participle form, all these 3 forms have or continue the same pattern. Okay, even then they will be classified as irregular verbs. Okay, now we move on to the second type of the irregular verb. Now what is it? In the second type of the irregular verb, we have the same the simple past and the past participle form, correct? Now verbs which have the same past simple and past participle form, that means which have the same second degree as well as the third degree, correct? Now if such a kind of a verb is there, that will also be called as an irregular verb. For example, you see bring, brought, and brought. Now bring is the base form of the verb bring, its simple past is brought, and its past participle is also brought. This is also a kind of an irregular verb. Now the third kind of the irregular verb will be the verbs which have the same base form and the past participle form. That means the first degree of the verb and the third degree of the verb are the same. They are written the same way, they are spelled the same way, and they are pronounced the same way, correct? But the second degree, that is the simple past, is different. Now what sort of a verb is that? For example, come, came, and come. There are precisely 3 verbs which are actually classified into this type, okay, wherein the simple past and the past participle, the first and the third degree of the irregular verb, are the similar. And then you have the last part or the last type of the irregular verb, which says it has a different base form, different past simple form, and a different past participle form, wherein all the 3 are different. Okay, now let's take an example 2. Now that is begin, began, begun, run, ran, run, do, did, done. Okay, now these are verbs wherein these are irregular verbs, but all the 3 different degrees of the verbs are different. They're not similar. They're not written in the same way. They're not pronounced in the same way. and obviously they have different connotations in the usage of such verbs. All right, now in this class we will precisely focus on the irregular verbs. We will try and understand as to what the irregular verbs are all about. Regular verbs we will take up at a different time, precisely because it is more important to understand the irregular verbs, because they've got different forms, they've got different types, and they are classified into these 4 categories. Okay, I have tried to make the presentation as simple as possible for you, and I wish it is going to be informative. It is I hope it is going to give you as much information as simply as possible. And I also appeal to you, urge to you to use the information that you have at your disposal, okay, that is provided by the teacher or the guide or the mentor, so that it stays with you, the information stays with you, doesn't run away. It's not like out of sight, out of mind. Now you are in the class right now, so things will get inside your head, but then if you do not use it, if you do not put into practice, put the things into practice on a daily basis, I don't think they are going to stay with you. So my dear young friends, today's class was that of a class which revolved around the verb. We talked about 2 types of verbs. One, the regular verb, and the second one, the irregular verb. Okay, now what is a regular verb? What is an irregular verb? A regular verb is generally a verb which can be written by using ing plus ed, all right, the ed forms. But then, for example, the word descend, descended, descending, we can use that, so it's a regular verb. But then, for example, we use this word as come, 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 correct? It's an irregular verb, okay, and it is the 3rd type of the verb, wherein the first degree of the verb and the last degree, that is the past participle degree of the verb, are written in the same form, that is come. But the second degree, that is the simple past form of the verb come, becomes came, right? Now these are irregular verbs. We talked about how there are 4 types of irregular verbs. We took examples. I have tried to mention all the examples, or as many examples as possible. I have also given sentences. Try to make sentences of your own. Use the information that is there in the PowerPoint presentation, and whatever doubts you are free to ask to me during the class. Even if you have free time, you can give me a call on the same number that you have on WhatsApp, and shoot me your inquiries. All right, I hope and pray that the information that we are trying to learn, the stuff that we are trying to learn during this online e-summer course is going to provide us the information as well as the fun that we need in these times of lockdown, wherein we are, all of us are inside our homes. But then, not to worry, try to enjoy the learning process as much as possible, and tell me, give me your feedback, if we can add something else to the videos, if we can add something else to the presentations, if we can do something, if you can use a better way to give you video lectures, please feel free to drop in your inputs. And I also urge your parents to please look into these video lectures and give their inputs how we can make them better. All right, I hope that this message, this lecture finds you in the best of health and peace. Thank you all. See you in the next class.